Pasha Paro, YNet7. Thank you for tuning. The replay. Let me get this up for you real quick. Got some things we're gonna go over today. Like always. All right, so today's title, right? What I want to go over today is because people be asking, they be like, why what's this thing with America versus the United States, right? What's going on? Why you be? And I've been thinking about how to explain this to people for years. I've been explaining it to people for a long time, and I'm not going to, hold on one second, announce that I'm the best translator, because I tend to only know how to speak in the terms of the truth, right? And that sometimes, doesn't work well with people's emotions and opinions and stuff like that, right? So today's purpose is to showcase what I'm trying to say, what people like me are trying to say, in a form that will translate to corporate America, right? Because when we talk about this stuff, we tend to talk about it on a personal level, and then I think that opens it up to a lot of people feeling like it may or may not do anything for it. What does it really do for them, right? So let's take a look at this. If we go here, you've seen this before on the channel, you've seen this before in your life, I'm sure. But I titled this one, working title right now, how long would you let your coworkers call you by a different name? Okay? I mean, think about that. You go to work, your name is Tim, and everybody's calling you Tony. How long do you acquiesce to that? How long do you accept that before you say something? Right? So here is 1828 Webster's version of American. You've seen it before, I'm sure. It says, and I quote, a native of America. Well, we got the adjective version, which pertaining to America, which we're looking for the noun, right? So the noun is a native of America, originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans. Okay? But now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. All right? So I wanted to go over today partly explain why it's not really your fault talking to the people that don't know this. And I'm talking to the people of all different looks, right? That don't know this. I don't care if you think you're a white person. I don't care if you think you're a black person. I don't care if you are from Africa or from France, whatever. Okay? If you don't know this, take this time, watch me show you this in real life, because once you learn it, you can then respect it. All right? You don't know what you don't know. We don't know what we don't know. Okay? And that's what we got to start doing. We got to start having this conversation with everybody, and they mentioned that in here, and I'm gonna show you why I've been doing this, basically in their own words, from a business side. Okay? So let's get into it. This article that made me realize this was a key. I stumbled across from Forbes, and let's see if I blow that up a little bit, right? And I said, you know what, this is kind of important because let's get to it. So it says, no, every person of color does not need to be a DEA. I mean, well, see, first of all, they got the letters. They're using the alphabets too much. And it ask in here later on, one of these things, how can the DEI, get more what they call black people involved? And I laughed to myself and I said, the first thing you need to do is change the letters because that's too close to DEA. We ain't really trying to have, I know, I'm American, but anybody that looks like me, we trying to have no relations with the DEA, period. So that's too close to DEA, those letters that you can't do that to us. All right. So first of all, give it a different name. But all right. So that's my little humor for the moment. Let me get down into this. What is DEI professional? I look, see what I'm saying? So DEI professional, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay, so the article is saying, no, every person of color does not need to be a DEI professional. All right. And it says, this person here states that I help create strategies for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Excuse me. All right. So to go over this article a little bit, it says it's been over a year since the murder of G. Floyd, and the diversity, equity, and inclusion industry is experiencing unprecedented growth. Companies are now spending an exorbitant amount of their budget to ensure that DEI is prioritized, and rightfully so, it says. Previous DEI initiatives have been heavily focused on gender equality, which is why you got rainbows everywhere. Okay. So with less emphasis put on racial equity. All right. With DEI in the spotlight, we right here, receiving more attention than ever before, there are a lot of people transitioning into a DEI role within their current company, or are entering the DEI space from a different field. This article is not an attack. This is what they say. It's not an attack or indictment on either of these groups, but rather an exploration of some considerations we must make when it comes to our DEI programming. All right. So organizations must consider the points being made in this article. Not every black now notice they capitalize black too, okay? Remember, Roman capitalization laws. All right, so not every black, indigenous, person of color, so they got this thing now, it's a BIPOC, is equipped to lead corporate DEI efforts. Look at this verbiage now, okay? So, and similarly, not every BIPOC wants to lead these efforts. Okay, we cannot assume that every racially minoritized individual is interested and invested in DEI. Now, racially minoritized. Remember, the word minority actually is speaking about level of competence. When you go to court, no matter what you look like, if you have a lawyer, you're considered to be a minority. And you can't, incompetent of handling your own affairs, and that's why the lawyer speaks for you and you can't speak. You're being represented, right? So the terminology here for me, racially minoritized, which means you're racially being made incompetent, or you're being made incompetent through race. I'm not going to dive too deep into that, but just look at the way they're wording this stuff. Okay. So we cannot assume that every racially minoritized individual is interested and invested in DEI. Be mindful of not overloading employees of color with DEI work you assumed they wanted to do simply because of their group membership. I don't know about that one. So, but workshop facilitators who have personal experiences with racism are able to provide the nuance required to lead training efforts, but DEI trainings are only the tip of the iceberg. How do you conduct an equity audit? What strategies can be implemented to retain underrepresented talent? How do you set up a sponsorship program? How do you get employees to join and participate in a DEI task force? You see what I'm saying? Like, you can't call that shit a DEI task force. That's close to DEA task force. We ain't joining that shit. All right, so keep going here. So what is some current, best practices and strategies? ... And they continue to go on with that down here. Okay. Now, what is? Let me see here. So basically, let me get to what is the black, indigenous, color of person, and they had like a couple other things that they categorized under this, right? So right here in the title, but there's a list. I had it, I misplaced it for the moment, but I want to move on because you'll get the gist of it without it. But there's groups here that they talk about. So you see black, indigenous, right there. They're separating the words. Okay, so what was American? American was Native of America, originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans. So why is this important here? Because the issue is if many people that look like me, right, go to work, go to the store, walk around in public, and they call each other black, okay? So when I go to that same place, they try to impose me to be black, all right? And I have to let them know, the difference. I have to let them know I'm American. You see? Because I'm one of the original copper-colored, quote-unquote, races found here by the Europeans, okay? So, what is indigenous? Now, this actually is from Canada. Don't worry, I got the full disclosure right here, but I wanted to read through this for you because when I found it, it kind of pointed out some things that make maybe a little bit more obvious to some. Okay, so indigenous, as far as diversity and inclusion, that's the title of the article. You see the date. You can look it up, read the whole thing on yourself, for yourself at this leisure. So right here, if you scroll down, it says, what is indigenous inclusion? Indigenous inclusion is about building and fostering relationships with indigenous people with other cultures. It's about creating a respectful environment to explore, learn, and communicate with a community that has been underrepresented for a long time in history. Okay. It is also about educating future generations about the truth and reconciliation. All right. Now, the questions they have here, I thought this is what I wanted to point out to you real quick. So who are the First Nations people? They call it First Nations people. Peace, King. Thanks for joining. So it says the First Nations are descendants, I'm right here, are descendants of the original people who lived in Canada before the European explorers arrived. Boom, right? Canada keeps it really simple. So why were First Nations people called Indians? When early European explorers, this is what they said, right? When early European explorers landed in North America, they thought they were in India, so they called the original inhabitants Indians. But we know here that they know they were in America and they called us Americans. All right, but here we go. What do we mean by Aboriginal people in Canada? In Canada, Aboriginal people include the First Nation, okay, right here, and Métis or Métis, if I'm saying that, I tried. So who are descendants of European fur traders / settlers who married First Nation women in early Canadian history. An Inuit, who were formerly called Eskimos, okay? And then it says the federal government established the term Aboriginal people as a broad umbrella term for the diverse Indigenous people in Canada for all genders, including Aboriginal women and men. Then it goes left field on me and talks about two-spirit, and that's people that have male and female. Don't worry about that part. Let's stay focused on that part, okay? All right, so that's why I wanted to show you about the Canada side, okay? Because right here, Aboriginal people in Canada were who? Basically everybody that was here before the Europeans. What does it say an American is? Originally applied to the Aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans when they arrived. ... All right, so let's get to the complicated American version, right? Native American and Indigenous, or the United States version. So it says, who are the indigenous peoples? Indigenous peoples are the descendants of the peoples who inhabited the Americas, the Pacific, and parts of Asia and Africa prior to European colonization. Indigenous peoples continue to thrive throughout the world today. All right, so here we go. What is the proper terminology? Indigenous indigenous peoples, Native American, or American Indian. So it says generally indigenous, right, refers to peoples who with pre-existing sovereignty, okay, who were living together as a community prior to contact with settler populations, most often, though not exclusively, Europeans, okay? Indigenous is the most inclusive term, as there are indigenous peoples on every continent throughout the world, okay? Such as the Sami in Sweden, etc., the First Nations in Canada, Mayas in Mexico and Guatemala, and the Ainu in Japan, fighting to remain culturally intact on their land bases. All right. Now that's indigenous. Now, indigenous peoples refer to a group of indigenous peoples with a shared national identity, such as Navajo or Sami, and is the equivalent of saying the American people. Right here. Right here. Okay? Aboriginals, indigenous peoples, American people. Now here's where it changes up. Native American and American Indian are terms used to refer to peoples living within what is now the United States prior to European contact. All right. American Indian has specific legal context because the branch of law, federal Indian law, uses this terminology. American Indian is also used by the U.S. Office of Management through budget and budget through the U.S. Census Bureau. Okay. So when we come down here, Go back to the Canada one and put this together. So, do indigenous people get everything free from the government of Canada? I know, but I need to show this to you what they're saying here. It's a difference. The government of Canada owns their land and have control over decisions made on their land. Example, how indigenous peoples can live and use their land. Okay? Indigenous people have the right to use the land and benefit from it, but cannot own the land. And it says indigenous people only own about 0.02% of the land. When you can't own homes on land, you can't get credit for land ownership. Okay. What is Indian status in indigenous? All right. That's why I said I like the Canada one, because it kind of splits the thing and makes it kind of simple. All right. What? All right. You get what I'm saying? So right here, what is Indian status in indigenous? Indian status is the legal status of a person registered as an Indian. Registered Indians may be eligible for benefits, rights, programs, services offered by the Canadian government. You are not born into the Indian status. You actually need to apply, prove, and be interviewed legally to be recognized, or to be legally recognized as an Indian. So Indian is not Aboriginal. Indian is not indigenous. Indian is not American. Right? In the way it's been presented to the public. Now you go dig into the history or the reality, you'll find out that who originally was the Indians looked like me. They were probably, I've been saying this for a while. We were already here. That's the great magic trick of the way they sold slavery to us in school. Because when you believe that we're all from a different continent, it at best, the people will ask for reparations. At best. When you know that you're American and you were already here, it puts you in the mindset of asking for your nation back. That's totally different ball game there. They ask for reparations all you want. There's reasons why they ain't give it to you. Let me know if you want to know. I got some people you can talk to. Okay. So why is this important? Okay. Because then we get into this here, right? I found this for you. Teaching Etiquette for Business of Life by Candace Smith. Give her a thumbs up or something. Okay. So correcting someone who calls you the wrong name. Okay. Cause I know one, I'm gonna get into how this has been massaged into your brain that this is who you are. You see, if we don't know who we are, then someone else can tell us what they want us to believe we are, and we'll believe it. But if it's a contract and you sign it without reading it, who's to blame? You know what I mean? And I understand many of us had a point in time, many of us not, some of us was born into the knowledge, but many of us have a period of time where we didn't know this stuff in our life, and what I need the communities to do, I don't care if you call yourself white, I don't care if you call yourself black, I don't care if you call yourself Chinese, you need to know the truth, because now we can talk on the level of what's real instead of what's make believe. You see that word? Make believe. Let's change it to past tense. Made believe. Okay? Once we all know the truth, we can all respect it. So this is why we need to take the time to let people know what our name is. And this is how Candace, what's her name? Candace Smith says, you know, we should professionally do that. So look, check this story out real quick. I was really embarrassed. I'm starting off here. It says, I was really embarrassed when I learned I've been calling the local store owner the wrong name. Right? I happened to overhear another customer use her correct name in conversation. I realized I made a mistake. It says she apologized, stating that I've been getting her name wrong forever, and she was very gracious and commented that it's a familiar error. But I wondered why she hadn't corrected me. Okay. So it says someone once said that your name is the first gift you are given, and you should be respected as such, and should be respected as such. And it says here, I agree. Being called your correct name is a must. All right. The quote is, the name doesn't become the man. The man becomes the name. Okay? That goes into like some Kabbalah, some energies, practices, and all that stuff that, you know, we may talk about later. You've definitely heard it from me before. Now think about that on a nationality level. The name doesn't become the man. The man becomes the name. So if you're supposed to be American, that's where your birthrights are. That's where everything that you feel like you deserve is. But people keep calling you black, which is not your name. You become black by the fact that, again, the name doesn't become the man becomes the name. So if you're told a lie long enough, you start to believe it. And if you don't understand the contract you sign, that doesn't mean it doesn't apply to you. Okay? All right, so let's get into this, because this is the same thing we need to do. All right? I'm going to skip this part here, and we'll go over this a little bit, and then we jump back into the workplace stuff to tie it all together for you, and then we can close and get up out of here. I appreciate your time. So it says the first time, simply be upfront and state. See, a lot of you don't know how to do this because, one, you may be uncomfortable with the fact that you may not really know who you are. You might, once you really commit to saying, you know what, I am American. Now when people start calling you black, this is what you need to do. Simply be upfront the first time. Simply be upfront and state the correction directly the first time the error is made. If after you were introduced, someone addressed you as Mary, you might correct him by saying it's Mary. I don't know that there was phonetically, I don't know how you distinguish this difference, but you get what they're trying to say. Okay. Someone addressed you as Mary with a Y. You might correct them by saying it's Mary with an IE. You would do this with your name. Why don't we do it with our nationality? Second time, perhaps you have a name that's easily mixed up. If you mention to the same person that he has your name wrong, make the correction again, but with more detail. John, my name is Mary with an I-E, not with a Y. All right. Third or more, if the mistake happens with the same person yet again, focus will be necessary. You'll need to determine whether you should take the person aside when you get a chance and let them know one-on-one what is happening. John, I noticed you are still calling me by my wrong name. I want to help you out, as sometimes a wrong name can freeze in another person's mind and brain. Freeze doesn't feel good. My name is Mary with an IE, right? So we role play this with hey, what was his name? Let's do the last one. Hey, John, I noticed you still calling me black. I want to help you out, as sometimes a wrong name can freeze in another person's mind and brain. Freeze doesn't feel good. I am an American. And see, once we start letting them know who we really are, they will need to accept that. Everybody. I don't care if it's what you would think was a black person talking to another what you think is a black person. I don't care if it's a white person talking to a white person. I don't care if it's a Chinese person talking to, you know what I mean? They have to know, it has to be made known who we really are. Because the longer you guys, maybe not you that's watching this, but the people around you are still running around here talking about they black, the more they're going to try to impose that on us that know better. Okay? All right, back to the what the corporations are saying, because this showcases how they're massaging. You go through school, right? You go through the neighborhood, you go through the everything, you grow up and you get this job, and they're still massaging the fact that they want to call you something else, right? So why do company diversity, equity, and inclusion programs need intersectional approaches, right? And it's written by, we have here, and Annalise Thim, Associate Director, and Victoria Rebecca, Manager, Women's Empowerment. Give them a thumbs up, because they know what they're talking about, right? So over the past 2 decades, women have made slow but steady progress towards workplace equality. And what I really found interesting with this video, with this particular article, is the focus of the conversation, because it's talking about the DEI programs, but let's look at what they're talking about in the programs. Okay, so globally, women's and it may be some bias, because, and I'm not saying bias in a negative way, but just that this is their focus because they happen to be women. Okay, but we see how what's given value in the communities and programs, and who's getting, rights and all this conversation examined, and we know who's not. Does it start here, or does what we get here start from somewhere else, where there's this, we're allowing ourselves to be forgotten in the conversation because we're not speaking up about it, or at least not enough of us is speaking up about it yet. Okay? All right. So globally, women's share board seats has increased, and the gender pay gap continues to gradually close. It's saying over 3,800 companies around the world sign up to the women's empowerment principles, right? Since their launch in 2010. Okay, you can read some of this on your own time. I'm gonna go to this point. It says in the U.S., white women hold nearly 4 times as many Fortune 500 board seats than women of color. Okay. Research from the UK reveals that LBTQ+.com, okay, women's experience of sexual harassment and assault at the work vary significantly depending on their ethnicity. Okay. 54% of lesbian, bisexual, and trans black and minority ethnic women reported unwanted touching compared to 31% of white. It says here in France, black, Arab, and Asian women are 2.5 times more likely to experience employment discrimination than white women. Now, first of all, when I read stuff like this, I remember when you used to fill out the job application and it told you on the application what the terms white and black mean. So I always wonder, when I'm reading articles like this, are they writing it from the standpoint of the common use of the word, or are they writing it from the standpoint of what the nationality codes mean? First of all, first question. All right. But you see, one, there's no conversation in here about indigenous. There's no conversation in here about American. They talking about trans black. At best, they mention black in France. I guess you could say that's the whole category. The article's mainly focused about women. So what you think is black men, where are they at in this conversation? And what we know to be Americans is never mentioned in proper nomenclature, would it be? All right. So it says, these are the reasons why your black employees keep... I switched articles here. These are the reasons why your black employees keep quitting. Okay. It says in the last few years, there have been a wealth of research that determines gapping inequities in the workplace. One of the most disconcerting trends of note is the mass exodus of employees of color, and particularly black employees in American workplaces. You see, this sentence right here is magical if you know what the terms mean. One of the most disconcerting trends of note is the mass exodus of employees of color. So even if we give them credit and say they use employees of color to just group everybody that's of all various shades of copper, right? Mexicans are a shade of copper. Chinese are a shade of copper, whether they like it or not. We're a shade of copper. Africans or most of them are like dark copper. There's really nobody that's just black. You know what I'm saying? Hardly. There's very few people are black by color, first of all. And if you're counting it as a nationality, well, you already know how I feel. You can't show me the nation of black on a map. And the issue with that is that what law applies to you is determined by jurisdiction. All right? So it's determined by nationality, excuse me. So if we don't know our nationality, then we can't be fit into the proper law or birthrights, like we said in the beginning. So then they continue and say, and particularly black employees in American workplaces. So that kind of tells you that black is separate from American. Okay, you see that because they're that's why they're separate. Black employees in American workplaces. They didn't even go as far as to say in the United States workplaces. They said black employees in American workplaces. It's right there showing you that there's a difference. So this is a phenomenon. I'm continuing here. That has written about ad nauseum. Yet there's been few changes in a positive direction. Just last month, all right, for all you Facebook Zuckerberg, protesters, I think you missed something. But look, just last month, Facebook was under fire again. When was this article written? Back in December 2019. So just last month, Facebook was under fire again after an article was published claiming that the company empowers racism. Excuse me. You gotta hit my peoples up. Mondo. He got the End Racism hats, End Racism clothing. Good look. I'll have him put the link in the comments below if you're interested. So this comes just after one year after a former Facebook manager made similar claims that the company has an issue with black people. With the increased spotlight on diversity and inclusion in the workplace, gender priority seems to be more within reach than racial equity. All right. So you can read this article here. Okay, it gives them some things that they may want to do. Stop conflating black people with all people of color. You see what I'm saying? They're controlling the dialogue to help you put the blinders on like a horse, so you stay in this lane and don't want to get out. Look, as indicated in findings from CTI, black professionals are typically lumped into the category of persons of color. Like, they're basically brainwashing you to not want to be included in the whole of the Aboriginals. They didn't say it like that, right? But the magic of the words, what's going to be the success of this? Which can diminish and undermine their unique experiences. There you go, playing that gaslighting card, getting them all worked up. Emotional attachments. Reinforce the emotional attachments to beliefs. We want you to believe that what? You're not American. Why? Because if you knew you were American, you would be more powerful. And if all of you knew you were American, right? We'd be in the fucking trouble. That's what they're thinking. So they're spending millions and billions of dollars on the corporate level now to make sure when you go home after work, you remind your future generations that they should want to be black, not American. Do you see the manipulation? It's subtle. It's very subtle. But it's clear and present danger. Okay? All right. Let's see here. Create leadership connection opportunities. This one was interesting. Research indicates that if employers can create opportunities for sponsorship, this can have a profound impact on career advancement for black professionals. According to the aforementioned CTI study, few black employees feel they have access to senior leaders compared to their white counterparts. Creating formal mentorship and sponsorship programs will allow black professionals to forge these bonds that can propel their career. So now they're going to hold the whole career hostage itself and say, guess what? We got all these programs for you that we can do, but you got to tell us you're black. I'm not even going to talk about historic black colleges. So look, right? Exclusionary and hostile work environment. Black professionals, more than any other race, are more likely to experience racial bias. The CTI study found. Assesses of microaggressions are addressed and what policies, practices, and procedures may be enabling this bad behavior. Think about how microaggressions are dealt with in your workplace and how perpetrators, see, this is what I'm telling you, you can't have terms like DEI task force and then be talking perpetrators and want us to get involved. Perps. You know what I'm saying? All right, so are held accountable. Let me get back to this here. Think about how microaggressions are dealt with in your workplace and how perps are held accountable. Okay? Although microaggressions may seem benign on the surface, they can have compound effect that contributes to black employee turnover. More conversations about race. Bam! Key point. More conversations about this, okay? To create an environment where black people, and just substitute American, if you know what I mean, whatever, okay? To create an environment where black employees feel like they matter and are valued, employers should create opportunities for more racial dialogue. This is why wherever I'm at, I'm always honest about this shit. I don't care if you're the plant manager. I don't care if you're the regional HR leader, supervisor, whatever that title is. They all knew, hey, look, I'm American. Don't refer to me as black. And I ain't care what they look like. Why? Because they need to know who I am. They need to know what? They calling me the wrong name. John, I notice you are still calling me black. I want to help you out. As sometimes a wrong name can freeze in another person's mind and brain. And freeze doesn't feel good. I am an American. And here's why. And then show them. And then have the nerve to pull out your cell phone and show them the American Webster Dictionary definition 1828. Because if they have any questions, here go the authority. You just educated them because nobody else told them this shit. Chances are. Now you are starting to change the world with that one correction. Now it won't be as foreign when the next person come to him and say, "Oh, I ain't black, I'm American." And then eventually we'll start telling the police, "Whoa, you got me fucked up. You thought I was black, didn't you? Yeah, you look like you're black. I'm American." You know what that means, right? We've been talking about it now for 2 years. The whole world knows. We know that we know that we know. It's a different ball game now. Cause and effect. All right, so we need to have more conversations about this. And that's what the article ends on. It talks a little bit more in depth in that little paragraph about having more conversations. I hope you can see where I was going with this. And then here's where I want to close. We remember this, don't we? And they titled this article, "When an Employee Lies About Race, There's No Easy Solution." So the problem is, what you don't know is that if you leave that box unchecked, the person that you're turning in the documentation to can make an observation after you gone, while you there, whatever, and check a box for you based on their observation. So now if we don't educate them and you think you're leaving the box black, not checked, or you're leaving the box African American not checked, or you're leaving the box white not checked, or national not checked, they can put in whatever they want later. Did you go back and check it? Did you ask for a copy of it after they filed it and got you ill in? I don't care if it was a job, an application, for a finance or whatever. Did you go back and get a copy of it after they submitted it to see what it looked like after the process was done? No, most of you didn't. What am I getting at here with this? Go back to this. So now they're saying when an employee lies about race, okay, on the application. Now, and we'll close after this. So it says here, it's amazing how something starts out seemingly small and private. Look, okay. So this is so nice. This is so nicely written. All right, we gotta give credit to excuse me. I guess it's Molly Mosley. I don't know, or is it Anthony? No, the pictures. That's the picture. Okay. So you see the article credit, you see the picture credit. Here we go. All right. So a fib on a job application can escalate into an issue or event that ignites national dialogue. Okay, so we need to let them know they've been fibbing on the job applications so we can ignite national dialogue, because they need to know we American. We don't want to be a part of the Christian black codes anymore. Okay, that certainly seems to be the case for R.D. Lazille, right? The now former head of Spokane, Washington NAACP reports claims that D gave a false answer about her race on at least one job application, although it was for a police department position and not the NAACP. Now, one, I don't care what her parents said. Maybe she did a DNA test. I don't know I know the headlines. I know what? But I ain't gonna dive it into the story because it's me. I kind of knew, you know what I mean? But for her benefit and the benefit of this conversation that we're having today, if she did a genetic test and it came back that she got some ancestry of us up in her, does it matter to her parents maybe trying to hide that information? That could have been what fucked up. All this could have been fucked up for her because they trying to hide some shit they didn't want to know was in their bloodline. Right? Anyway, you can read this article if you don't already know about it. The point I'm trying to make is when it comes down to a situation like this, they want to make sure that it makes a difference which box you check. That's the point I'm making here. This shit got national headlines because they wanted to make you know she checked the wrong box, so she lied. But they ain't telling you checked the wrong box when you hit black and you an Aboriginal. What's the difference? What did it say we need to do here? We need to have more conversations about race. What do we need to do? We need to say, John, I notice you are still calling me black. I want to help out, as sometimes a wrong name can freeze in another person's mind and brain. Freeze doesn't feel good. I am an American. And I am Pasha Pyro. Thank you for tuning the replay. Please subscribe if you're watching this on Facebook. Follow if you're watching this on the YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Share it with as many people as you can to get this message out here. I think you see the value, and I appreciate your time and support. Enjoy.